All right, good afternoon, students. Today we're going to be reading a brand new book called Bud, Not Buddy. And this book is written by Christopher Paul Curtis, who has written many well-known books throughout his career. And in social studies, we've been learning about the Great Depression. And we've been learning about how over 13 million people were without jobs, didn't have any work. Different families were moving in together to save money. Many businesses closed down. The entire economy was collapsing. So this was a really rough time in American history. And so this book is actually taking place during that time. And so this book is historical fiction. Does anybody know what historical fiction means? No? Historical fiction means that the book takes place in an actual time period in history, but the actual story is not real. So the characters aren't actually like real people that were living in that time period. But a lot of the facts about the Great Depression are in this book, and you'll notice it as we read. But a big part about this book is that jazz music is written about all throughout this book. I don't know, have any of you guys heard jazz music before? No? Yes? Yeah, you've heard some jazz music? Well, I have a jazz song to play for you, just so you know. We're not going to listen to the whole song because those songs can get pretty lengthy because people like to dance to them, so they last a long time. But this song is called All Praviv, and I'm going to play a little bit, but you can't play jazz music without wearing sunglasses. So I'm going to put on the sunglasses, and we're going to listen to some jazz music really quick. Does anybody know what kind of instrument that you hear in a jazz song? What's the main instrument that you're hearing right now? Does anybody know what it's called?
Saxophone.
It's a saxophone. Yeah, saxophones were widely used in jazz music. It was kind of the core of what jazz music was. I actually have a picture of a saxophone that you guys can look at. And most people would play the saxophone, have it strapped onto them. They had cool shades on like I do, have a little button down, and they would be playing jazz music while people were dancing for hours. Sorry. And that's kind of what they did. So you'll be able to see how jazz music plays a role in this book once we begin. So we're going to begin by reading the very first chapter. And I want you to pay attention during the first chapter about the different characters in this story and how the author portrays these different characters. I'm going to stop throughout the reading so we can kind of gather all the information that we're figuring out. This book has no pictures, so I'll just be reading it to you guys, and we'll be talking about it. So I'm going to begin with chapter 1 of Bud, Not Buddy. Here we go again. We were all standing in line waiting for breakfast when one of the caseworkers came in and tap, tap, tap on the line. Uh-oh, this meant bad news. Either they'd found a foster home for somebody or somebody was about to get paddled. All the kids watched the woman as she moved along the line, her high-heeled shoes sounding like little firecrackers going off on the wooden floor. So it mentioned that the characters so far, they live in a foster home. Does anybody know kind of what a foster home is?
It's for people who don't have parents.
Yeah.
Kids that don't have families.
It's for orphans. It's for little kids who don't have any families and don't have a mom or dad to go home to. So we talked about how sad the Great Depression was, and I can't even imagine being in the Great Depression and being an orphan as well, not having a home. So it must be a really tough time for these kids. Shoot, she stopped at me and said, "Are you Buddy Caldwell?" I said, "It's Bud, not Buddy, ma'am." She put her hand on my shoulder and took me out of line. Then she pulled Jerry, one of the littler boys, over. "Aren't you Jerry Clark?" He nodded. "Boys, good news. Now that the school year has ended, you have been accepted in new temporary care homes starting this afternoon." Jerry asked the same thing I was thinking. "Are we together?" She said, "Why no, Jerry, you'll be in a family with 3 little girls." Jerry looked like he just found out that they were going to dip him in a pot of boiling milk. "And Bud?" She looked at some paper she was holding. "Oh yes, the Amoses. You'll be with Mr. and Mrs. Amos and their son, who's 12 years old. That makes him just 2 years older than you. Doesn't it, Bud?" "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I'm sure you'll be very happy." Me and Jerry kind of looked at each other. So how do you think that the main character, which we now know why the name of the book is called Bud, not Buddy, is because his real name is Buddy, but people call him Bud. He likes to call himself Bud too. How do you think they're feeling right now, just based on what I've read about the two characters so far? Do they feel happy about their new homes that they're going to? No? No, they seem like they kind of feel a little sad about being separated from each other. What can we infer about the two boys that they don't want to be separated from each other?
Maybe they've had bad past experiences.
Yeah, that could be it. Definitely. And I also think that they must be pretty close if they don't want to be apart from each other. They must be really good friends. The woman said, Now, boys, no need to look so glum. I know you don't understand what it means, but there's a depression going on all over this country. People can't find jobs, and these are very, very difficult times for everybody. We've been lucky enough to find 2 wonderful families who've opened their doors for you. I think it's best that we show our new foster families that we're very... She dragged out the word very, waiting for us to finish the sentence for her. Jerry said, cheerful, helpful, and grateful. I moved my lips and mumbled. She smiled and said, Unfortunately, you won't have time for breakfast. I'll have a couple of pieces of fruit put in a bag. In the meantime, go to the sleep room and strip your beds and gather all of your things. Here we go again. I felt like I was walking in my sleep as I followed Jerry back to the room where all the boys' beds were jammed together. This was the 3rd foster home I was going to, and I'm used to packing up and leaving. But it still surprises me that there are always a few seconds, right after they tell you that you've got to go, when my nose gets all runny, and my throat gets all choky, and my eyes get all stingy. But the tears coming out doesn't happen to me anymore. I don't know when it first happened, but it seems like they don't cry no more. Jerry sat on his bed, and I could tell that he was losing the fight not to cry. Tears were popping out of his eyes and slipping down his cheeks. I sat down next to him and said, I know being in a house with these girls sounds terrible, Jerry, but it's a lot better than being with a boy who's a couple of years older than you. I'm the one who's going to have problems. An older boy is always going to want to fight, but those little girls are going to treat you real good. They're going to treat you like some kind of special pet or something. Jerry said, You really think so? I said, I'll trade you in a minute. The worst thing that's going to happen to you is that they're probably going to make you play house a lot. They'll probably make you be the baby and will hug you to death and do this kind of junk to you. I tickled Jerry under his chin and said, Gaga goo goo baby wavy. So what is Bud trying to do right now with Jerry?
Cheer him up.
Trying to cheer him up because it's a pretty tough time that he's going through. It just kind of shows their friendship, how close they are to each other. And you'll notice that throughout the story. And Jerry couldn't help but smile. I said, You're going to be great. Jerry looked like he wasn't so scared anymore, so I went over to my bed and started getting ready. Even though it was me who was in a lot of trouble, I couldn't help but feel sorry for Jerry. Not only because he was going to have to live around 3 girls, but also because being 6 is a real rough age to be at. Most folks think you start to be a real adult when you're 15 or 16 years old, but that's not true. It really starts when you're around 6. It's at 6 that the grown folks don't think you're a cute little kid anymore, and they talk to you and expect that you understand everything they mean. Would you agree that 6 is a pretty grown-up time, I guess? Yeah. And you'd best understand too, if you aren't looking for some real trouble, because it's around 6 that grown folks stop giving you little swats and taps and jump clean up to giving you slugs that'll knock you right down and have you seeing stars in the middle of the day. The first foster home I was at taught me that real quick. 6 is a bad time too, because that's when some real scary things start to happen to your body. It's around then that your teeth start coming into your loose mouth. And so throughout the rest of the chapter, which we'll read later, he talks about how growing up can be really difficult. And he also starts to begin to talking about his dad that he wants to meet, which might have something to do with the jazz music that we played earlier. So far from reading chapter 1, what could you guys tell me about the 2 characters so far, Bud and Jerry?
They're both foster kids. Bud is 10. And I didn't say all of Jerry, and they're good friends.
Yeah, we can infer Jerry's a little younger, I guess. And, throughout the rest of the book, we're going to be looking at the different characters and how they develop throughout the story, and also be relating it to what we're learning in social studies with the Great Depression, and how these both play a role in the development of the novel. And we're also going to look at different strategies that Christopher Paul Curtis uses in the book to portray Bud and those around him.